And we're live. G'day, guys. Not a bad round 12, eh? Let me know if you can hear me, guys. Let me know your favourite moment of the round. Bear with me. I'll just set this all up as I always do. And I'll share it into the tripod group. And we'll get this underway. Cheers, boys. All right, boys, how we doing? I hope a few people trusted the pod and were on the Knights, because that was a lot more enjoyable if you were on the Knights. I know if a couple of things went their way. We'll get to that because, of course, that was the final game of round 12. I really didn't enjoy this round that much other than that, but when you win every best bet and you win the mixed matchup, you can't complain too much. Yeah, every haircut, the hairline recedes further and further back. It's my hairline basically receding down my back at this point. But what can you do? You guys don't tune in for my looks, that's for sure. Yeah, I wasn't afraid of the critics. I took the Knights again today. You can say what you want about the game, but it's the right side, I think. Welcome to the Tripod, where we break down the NRL every week, every game from a punting perspective. This is the round 12 live recap, and we've swept the round 3-0 on best bets. I was a little selective. I had a lean on actually all 8 matches, which makes it interesting to talk about. And in the group, I shared this week my lean on all 8. And I wasn't right on all 8 games, but at least the ones I made best bets. And in fact, I'm a little bit disappointed I left a few on the table. We won the mixed matchup. We got a win there in the final 90 seconds, 2 minutes of the game. I think we deserved that one. We picked the Knights, who were the outright upset winners against Manly today. And they only had to outscore the Raiders, who lost by 30 last night. And yet we would have lost that mixed matchup if not for a try with 2 minutes to go. So I think we deserved that one. But Maddie Blanche says, great tips, horrible round of footy. Yeah, there were so many mismatches in this round of footy or blowouts, unfortunately. But if you're winning on the punt, it does make even a bit of a grim round of footy more exciting. And the other thing that's exciting about round 12, guys, of course, is it's Origin selection weekend. So with regards to Origin selections, I have not seen the final Origin teams. I might talk a little bit about the Origin teams once they get selected on Wednesday, because on Wednesday we've actually got a split round coming up. So round 13 is only going to be a 4-match round. So I might just put a few minutes into Origin preview, I suppose. I'll just talk about the team list. Maybe I'll chuck my Origin preview in with the Sunday next week, because there'll only be 4 games to talk about. But let's spend this pod talking about the round that was. I should also say we lost the multi, unfortunately, today. We had Eddie Betts, who's been sharing cracking AFL tips. His tip today went down. He had won for us the last 5 weeks in a row, and my tip that corresponded with Eddie's did get up this week, whereas a couple other weeks, my tip's been the one that let us down. Unfortunately, that's just the thing with multis. The stars do need to align. Pardon me. And speaking of multis and speaking of the stars aligning, I want to give a shout out to one of the OGs of the pod, Brent Creel. He's been around for years. You guys should remember him, because he's the bloke who found the glitch in the same game multis years ago that gave you boosted odds on a golden point or a 1-point victory. Yeah, it had to be a golden point victory. A lot of boys cleaned up in our group. This is many moons ago, I think 2017, famously when the Cowboys beat the Broncos in Golden Point. Brent was the one who supplied the jam, and heaps of the boys got on over 100-1. And he got up a multi. I won't say how much it's paying in case he doesn't want people to know, but he got up a very juicy multi. I'm talking 100-1 this weekend, and he needed the Knights to cover an extended line and unders, and he didn't even have to sweat through that one. Did I pay the bunker? Look, cheering with the BS calls. Look, I think that there were some rough calls that went against Manly for sure. And we will get to that game. And I think Manly could say that, they could have gone a lot closer to winning. But I tipped plus 12.5. So I'm certainly not going to apologise for that because I know the Knights showed up to play despite losing Ponga, despite losing Kurt Mann as well. And we still get the result and we sweep the round, boys. And that's always a good feeling. Let's begin with the Thursday night opener, which was the Broncos hosting the Storm. And this was not a match that I really got right because I thought Brisbane were catching too many points when they were getting plus 20.5. However, luckily I stayed away in terms of betting on the game. I spoke about how you just have to trust the heart of this Broncos team. And once again, what we saw was a fair bit of an arm wrestle of a game with Brisbane having chances, knocking on the door of the Storm's line, going very close, getting repeat sets. But when they couldn't score, they just dropped their heads. Once again, we just have this Brisbane team that just cannot handle any adversity. And they went from, I think this game was 0-0, I can't remember exactly 20 minutes in. And they end up going down at halftime 16-0. And the Storm just comes out and just continues trouncing them second half. I know this line got as high as 22.5. So, I mean, the Storm won by 28. So only one try away from Broncos covering that line. But this is a Storm team that's missing several of their key spine players, not to mention Christian Welch was scratched. And Broncos did not get near him. And the only other thing I'll say about that Storm game, every single week, Nicho Hynes is making himself a richer man because he's yet to sign for his future. He's a free agent next year. He may very well end up in Brisbane, and he's getting the chance to just glow and shine on the back of this team. The other thing I'll say about the Storm, they put teams to shame that complain about having key players out. You hear teams talk about, we've had to chop and change our halves. We haven't got consistency with our spine, with them all playing together. But you watch the Storm, and it's not just this season, it's past years where the Storm have gone into an Origin game and they've been missing like 6 players, and they still always put in. There is no excuse. So I really think that teams that try and make excuses about not having players that have played a lot of minutes, Cooper Johns had his 3rd or 4th ever start. He was in there. It didn't make a difference. Brandon Smith was also magical, and I spoke about Nicho Hynes. Let's move to the game of the round. Cowboys 29 defeated the Warriors 28. I didn't have a best bet on this one. I know a few of the boys enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty much a 50-50 game, but if I would have bet the game, I probably would have sided with the Warriors, and they were a slight favourite. So that obviously wouldn't have won either. So at least we didn't bet on that one ourselves, but I really enjoyed the game. Back and forth contest. Cowboys got out in front early. The Warriors ran them down. Spoke about this guy, Reece Walsh, last week. There's no way the Warriors would have won in round 11 without Reece Walsh, and he backed it up, and he was unreal again, and he had an amazing 100-meter return try in this game, and the Warriors were in front. The Warriors were up 6 with about 3 minutes to go, end up losing this game. When they were up 6, they had a chance to kick a field goal. The Cowboys strike back. The Hammer in his return game scores like a 60-meter try when they finally got in the ball in space against some tired bodies. Cowboys tie it up. Warriors, again, a chance to win the game, can't ice the field goal. And the man who can is Val Holmes he was an inch inside the 40-meter line, so technically a 1-point field goal, but it would have been good from 60. Absolutely clutch, an absolute beautiful kick by Val, and that's what he's paid to do. I mean, he's one of the most highly paid players in the comp, but those players sometimes are the difference in these matches. So he was in this case. He's going to be in the Origin team. And in fact, speaking of Origin, I don't know if these teams are coming out. If anyone sees any interesting stuff in the Origin teams, you can comment, because with Callum Ponga not playing today, with AJ Brimson possibly getting an injury today, you wonder if Reece Walsh, if it's that crazy that they'd at least bring him into the Queensland camp. I think he may have New Zealand heritage, but he's been declared, I think, born in the Gold Coast and declared himself an Aussie and a Queenslander. So again, he was unreal, but credit to this Cowboys team. I don't even really know who else to single out, although I will say Jake Clifford was excellent for them. I don't think they win that without his control and his kicking game in that one, and that may be the last time Clifford plays for the Cowboys. I believe it's a done deal that he's going to join the Knights. So at least a good game for him to sign off. Drinkwater has also been playing good footy at 5'8". Let's move to the later game Friday night, and a good result for us with the West Tigers winning 34-18. And when I say us, that's anyone who's on the 15-1 season multi. because we need the West Tigers to win 8 games this season. And so we're at the halfway point, and they've won 4, thankfully. And they were too good for the Dragons. And I'll tell you this, and I really believe this. And then I listened to Hook talk in his conference afterwards, and it definitely just confirmed my belief that the Dragons lost this game last weekend. That they poured everything into that derby game against the Sharks. We all know they had 5 or 6 guys out. They gutted that one out Friday night. They had the chance to win. They lose it agonizingly in Golden Point on a field goal, and I don't think they recovered. And they came into this one and just never got themselves into the contest. And what I've noticed about the Tigers, you never think of the Tigers as a good attacking team. You think of the Tigers as a side that used to be gritty and grindy, and if they could win a game, they would win ugly. But if they couldn't, usually the reasons they'd fall short was because they didn't have enough polish in attack, and we've criticized plenty of times their key position players. But rightly or wrongly, it really seems to me, and if I had to just throw a guess out there, it seems to me maybe since Robbie Farah's gone into the camp there, and now he's the blue shirt on the field, the West Tigers are throwing the footy around, and they are playing a lot more open. You look at what they did Magic Round, and look what they've done here, actually putting a couple wins on the ball, not afraid to embrace the new rules and throw the footy around. And as we know, they've spread Dewey out wide, and the other guy who's killing it is Dane Laurie. Again, I think I highlighted this early in the season. That was a really good under-the-radar pickup. You get anybody who can't get themselves into the Penrith team, they might still be a really good player. Dane Laurie is. The forwards are going well too. Now, if anyone knows the news on this one, Luciano Leilua, he's been really going well for the Tigers, but I heard he's not playing next week, so I couldn't recall if that's an injury or suspension. Luke Garner's also, I think, an unheralded back row that gets through work, so not much else to say on that one. West Tigers 34-18, but the reason I referenced Anthony Griffin in the press conference when they asked him about this match, they did not ask any questions about last week against the Sharks, and he brought it up multiple times in his answers about how, I really thought we played really well last week, and the last week was really tough, and he kept referring back to last week, and I really think that says something that, emotionally and physically, it's one thing. We talk about injured player theory. When you got injured players out, everyone steps up, but eventually you can't just sustain that level. You miss the guys who are out, so the Dragons did miss those guys, and it's a rough one for the Dragons because they've lost 6 of the last 7, I believe, so there were high hopes 2 months ago. Now they've come back down to earth for a number of reasons, not all their own fault, but the reality is setting in. Let's move to the first game, which was Saturday afternoon, the first game where I had a best bet. And the best bet, I'm going to cheer sheepishly because I don't think I called it well, but we get the win. In fact, I'm happy to say I got it wrong, but we won. And I love to be wrong but still win. And the worst of all is when you feel like you got a game right but you lost. And then, of course, plenty of other times I hope to just be right and win. And there's also going to be games, as I keep warning you, that I'm going to be wrong and we'll lose. So you get a mix through a season, but it is kind of sweet when you don't really see it right and you still win. And that is because my best bet was a try to be scored in the first 8 minutes. The Panthers crossed in the 5th minute. Thing and sweet. Yep, happy days. My reasoning, obviously, because the Panthers were expected to score over 40 tries. The total was anticipated over 50 points. It was an afternoon game in Penrith. If there's ever going to be a game with a lot of tries and, a match that could easily have had 4 or 5 tries in the first half, it would be this one. So, mathematically, it's just a smart play for us that I felt that would win 60% or more in our favour. So we get that win. There was not, the second try of this match was scored in the 40th minute of the half, and it was fluky as anything. The Dogs absolutely dug in, and I actually felt really bad for the Dogs because if you saw this game and looking at the final score, I know 30-4 probably surprises people in how close it was because I know a lot of people expected a cricket score in this one, and historically this was like the biggest favourites any team's ever been in the NRL modern era in terms of head-to-head and in terms of the line. But it was 4-0 to the Panthers after 39 minutes, as I said, and then a brutal moment with less than 60 seconds in the half. The Dogs are bringing back the ball off a kick. So there's no reason the Panthers are going to touch the ball again in the half. And Watene Zelezniak, the fullback, completely unnecessary offload into the lap of Spencer Leniu, and you go in 10-0. And, at the end of the day, the Dogs were never going to win that game, even if they went in at halftime down 4-0, but it was still a gut punch for a team that had really, really ripped in, bit down on the mouthguard and tried as hard as they could and stifled Penrith, to be fair. And I think another reason that Penrith didn't score many tries in that first half and early in the game was also showing patience. That they were happy to just make it a grind. That's the brilliant thing about this Panthers team is they can blow you off the park, but they're also willing to just go set for set with you and know that they'll win the arm wrestle as well. And that's the mark of a great team that can beat you in several different ways. So in fact, that is what Penrith ended up doing with, I think, 15, 20, 25 to go roughly. The Panthers ran a couple of tries in a row, including tries from forced errors on their own goal line and then taking it back the distance either in the same play or within one tackle. They're just so dynamic. There's an amazing try there to Stephen Crichton where they went length of the field where Burton, Brian To'o were all involved, and you love seeing these athletes run it in space. Nathan Cleary is always so in control. So, yeah, one thing I'll say about this game is this was, one of several blowouts of the weekend. This game was closer than a lot of other games this weekend, even though the final margin was 26. Actually, I give the Dogs a lot of credit for the way they dug in, but the Panthers weren't disappointed either. They did their job. They knew it's always a tricky game when you come into a game and you're expected to win by a record score. So they'll be more than happy to get through that without any injuries. I know Isaiah Yeo got cited and reported for a crusher, I believe, but I heard today that charge is not going to cost him any time off the field. And in fact, he's been picked for Origin for one. And I mean, of course, when Isaiah Yeo played for New South Wales last year and he's playing in a team this year that hasn't lost a game, it's kind of a no-brainer. Sounds like Jerome Luai is going to definitely be in the New South Wales team. I still don't know if he'll be playing 5'8" or if they'll use him at 14. Brian To'o, I've also heard, is in. And I'm just referencing all these because there was a post in our group about people saying, is next weekend a good weekend to bet against Penrith, catching double digits with a Tigers team? And there are quite a few Panthers players out. I don't think Crichton or Burton are going to make the Blues team from what I've heard. But, yeah, you've got a few key players. I guess the other key player would have been Coruscant, but it does sound like Damien Cook is going to retain his position, and that's a good segue into the Rabbitohs 38 defeating the Parramatta Eels 20. We've got a comment there from Matty Blanche, Para Pretenders. And what I just said, Damien Cook, he scored the opening try, and it was pretty soft. He binded the scrum at lock. Parramatta dropped the ball a minute into the game. Bunnies had a scrum 15, 20 metres out from the Para line, and Damien Cook picks it up from lock dummies and goes in untouched. And that set the tone for this game. And when I speak about how the Dogs actually put in a good effort against Penrith and lost by 26, don't be fooled by this scoreline of Rabbitohs 38 beating the Para by Para 20 and winning by 18 points. Para did not deserve to be that close. And I'm kicking myself because I had a really strong lean to the Rabbitohs. I mean, I'll fully admit, I also was very close to making the Dragons a best bet on Friday night. So I dodged that one. But the other games I would have had a best bet if I just was slightly more confident was Rabbitohs and Sharks. So I was a bit disappointed because when I don't give out a best bet, I prefer that the team doesn't play that great. But the Rabbitohs got back on track. I guess it depends in this one what you make of it and whether it was all about the Rabbitohs playing well or the Eels playing terrible. But I'm here to tell you, the Eels, and you guys know I love them, they were horrendous. They were awful. And I think if they didn't score a couple of lucky tries at certain stages through the match, this game would have blown out and they would have lost by 50. They're down 10-0 early. First of all, I talked about the Rabbitohs right to left attack. It looked like touch footy. The Eels could not lay a hand on the Rabbitohs anytime they swept it out to the left side. Dane Gagai got a hat trick. Can't remember how many Johnston got in the end as well, but that was just ridiculous. And then from an Eels attacking point of view, they did nothing. So that's the most empty 20 points you've ever seen. They get a fluky bounce off a chip in behind that goes into Gutho's lap for the first try when they're 10-0 down, that pulls it back to 10-6, makes the game feel closer than it was. They scored another try off a tipped bomb, and they scored another try kind of out of nothing where, fair enough, young fella Jacob Arthur just kicked in behind, regathered, and there was no one home because Latrell wasn't back there, and he scores. But what I'm telling you is Parramatta, I don't know what was wrong with them. I saw at halftime the Rabbitohs were up about 16 roughly, and Brad Arthur came down to sit with his team on the sideline. And I just got that feeling that he can feel as though they might get flogged here. He's not worried about X's and O's and watching in the box and strategy. He's coming down for like emotional support. That's the vibe I got from it at halftime, and pretty much played out that way. As I say, the scoreline flattered Parramatta. For the Rabbitohs, I think going into the bye now, they are definitely still a threat. I know that they had 50 put on them by both the two heavyweights of competition, but they got Cam Murray back in this one, and they are far from their peak. I know they've got improvement in them. I think the other player that people will be interested in is Latrell, because he's only been back for 2 weeks. I actually thought he was really quiet once again. I mean, a couple of silky touches that he always has in that backline sweeping play, right to left, but pretty quiet, to be honest, which is surprising because he's not back from injury. He's back from suspension, so you would have thought he could be fit as a fiddle coming into these games. My understanding is he's still going to get picked for Origin and play left centre, and I'm sure he'll still do a job, and he's got more ability than any other left centre in the comp, I think. So it's a scary proposition lining up against him, but I definitely wouldn't give the credit for Bunny's big turnaround performance to Latrell, having a game under his belt from last week. I thought it was other players that stepped up for him big time. Obviously, Origin Gagai and Kaloma Tangi as well is a gun back rower there. We move to the later game Saturday night where the Roosters 44 beat the Raiders 16-0. This was quite similar to the Raiders game last weekend where they jumped out. They were up last week 10-0 to the Storm. And what they ended up losing? 34-10. And in this one, they were up 10-0 to the Roosters. And I think the Roosters put on about 38 straight points as well. So we've kind of talked about this, and I wish I probably had bet the Roosters minus 11.5. I did at least put the Raiders in the mixed matchup as the team we bet against. But each week you're thinking maybe this is the week the Raiders will rip in. And I was thinking maybe grand final rematch or revenge from a couple of seasons ago. But it's only 18 months ago. You think that the Raiders would get up for it. But again, you just can't explain the lack of ticker on this Raiders team. And don't forget, Papali was back. Jack Whiten was back. Josh Hodgson was back. Whereas for the Roosters, Sam Walker was a late withdrawal. And that's the story of this game because Sam Walker got withdrawn. They moved Joey Manu to 5'8", and he absolutely carved up. And they gave Suaalii his second start, and Suaalii really shined. He debuted in a Broncos game where they lost by 16, and it was a tough night at the office. But in this game, he was excellent. He really held his own in defense and had a lot of flashes. I think had a try assist in there, scored a try as well, and he was fantastic. And I'm going to leave you with one more point on the Roosters. Look, when Keary went out with the ACL, I said Roosters can't win the comp. And I'll still stand by that. I still think they're just missing a little bit too much to win the comp, right? And a lot of you guys listening, and tell me what you think, how many teams can win the comp. There's probably some people watching or listening right now who just say the list is 2 teams and nobody else can win. And I was looking at the odds. You can actually just bet on a Storm Panthers grand final as a Quinella and get over $3 odds. So you figure Storm and Panthers are both going to probably finish first and second. If they win their opening round of the finals matches, they're both going to host prelims. And if you obviously believe that nobody can beat them in a finals match, then there you go. They're going to meet in the grand final. So I would say if you are just certain it's Storm and Panthers on a collision course, you can get over $3. For me, I think anything can happen in a game of rugby league. So as I said, I'm not ruling out the Rabbitohs as a team that can improve and be in that conversation. And this is what I'm going to leave you with. You look at all the guys who are out for the Roosters, but the form of Sam Walker, when he gets back in this team and plays 7, if Joey Manu became a permanent 5'8", he's honestly such a talented footy player. You got Suaalii and the ability of he slots into the centres, so you got him and Morris in the centres. You still got Ikuvalu and Tupou on the wings, and you still got Teddy at fullback. And not to mention in the forward pack, Radley's going to come back, and so is Boyd Cordner. My understanding is he will return from his lengthy spell on the sidelines. He's going to return to this team. So you're telling me they couldn't push towards the top 4 and upset somebody in the finals? So I think that if things fell their way, and the Roosters have had so many injuries, and Sam Verrills will come back in, it just wouldn't shock me. We know how well coached they are. You can't write them off. So that's all I'm saying is you cannot write the Roosters off despite all the adversity they've faced. And they were way too good for the Raiders, winning by how much they win by in the end? 28 points, which was the same margin of victory for the Sharkies today. Sharkies beat the Titans 38-10. This was definitely a surprise considering the Sharks came into the game as underdogs. And while the Sharks are listed first there, I think you can see on my graphic that the game was in a neutral venue in Coffs Harbour, so it wasn't even like a true Sharkies home game. I wish I'd backed the Sharks. I've been saying multiple times, you guys have heard it, that I think they're going to be a different team when Sean Johnson comes back and that they're not hopeless. And I mean, I know people hate hearing about like I was going to tip, but I was staring at Sharks to make the 8, $10. I was staring at it on Wednesday, Thursday, because if they win this, well, they did win this game, so now they're within 2 points of the top 8. Yes, they play Penrith next, but they play Penrith 2 days after an Origin, so you don't know like who's backing up from that because the Sharks going to the bye now. And then the Sharks run after round 14 is actually very friendly. And you've got Sean Johnson in the team, and they are a different team, and they really look so good and so polished in attack. He links up well with Matty Moylan. They dropped Townsend, but I think that's the right decision. Will Kennedy is an unsung star fullback, and the forward pack actually, I think, has players in there that play better than what people realize as well. So I should have been on the Sharks today. Can you believe my reason for not backing the Sharks was with the Titans getting all the forwards back in the team, such as Fafita, Tino back from suspension recently. I just worried that the Titans could win the forward battle. This game was so open and so side to side. It was just not suited for the forwards. It didn't matter how powerful you were. The game was played in space all day, and the Titans had nothing. And it got me thinking they definitely miss Peachy. He's the kind of guy that can create for them in a more open game. But I'm not here to make excuses for the Titans. If you watched them, they were horrible. And I go back to last week. They were nervous with 10 to go against the Dogs. They nearly didn't handle business there. They didn't cover the line. Here's another no-show on the road for the Titans. We know about that game where they went down and played Manly and got in Wagga or wherever it was and got beat by 36-0 or something. And this is pretty similar. Titans were terrible. They're missing a playmaking hooker, I believe. The halves player that just haven't been able to get it together. And the one shining light's been AJ Brimson, and he got injured today as well. So nothing went the Titans' way, but the Sharkies very deserved big winners, and their season is still alive. Can you believe it? And finally, guys, Knights 18 defeated the Seagulls 10. The best bets were Knights plus 12.5 and Seagulls team total under 32.5. So you really, I know that the Seagulls got out 10-0, so I won't say you never had to sweat, but pretty much for the majority of that game, there was never any doubt that we were going to cover those bets easily. What was in doubt, and I touched on before, the mixed matchup. We needed 17 or more points by the Knights. We get that late try. So I was envisioning a scenario where the Knights were going to win 12-10, and we would have had a massive upset team that we've picked to score more than a Raiders team that lost by 30, and we would have lost. But I think justice was served. We got the win. Now, heaps of people are very upset about this game. So, I mean, I was naturally cheering for the Knights, so I'm probably going to come across biased that I didn't think it was that lopsided refereeing. I mean, everybody's complaining that there were lots of penalties, and obviously the Seagulls copped a couple of sin bins. I think the Marty Tapau sin bin was terrible. I'm just thinking decisions off the top of my head. The pool cleaner, Morgan Harper, got thrown into touch late in that game in a key moment. I thought that should have been a penalty. The Tapau one especially is bad because they looked back 3 tackles ago and said that there was incidental contact to the head and sent him to the bin. But I just want to say a couple other things. Everyone was telling me that Manly's going to win by 20. Manly scored 6 points in this game thanks to a 95-metre intercept try by Saab. So if you take that away, they scored 4 points. Yes, they had a sin bin in the first half and a sin bin in the second half. So does that make the difference of, 30 extra points that Seagulls would have scored? I guess that's my question. Like, where do you draw the line? Like, fair enough, they didn't get the rub of the green and the Knights were at home. But look, at the end of the day, I think the Knights dug in tough. There was another moment where Tafita Funa, I thought, put a high shot on Tex Hoy in a contest for the ball. And the commentators thought it was a pretty clear sin bin and he didn't get into the bin. So, I think decisions go both ways. Well, when we get a team that was paying $5 to win, outright upset win, and you're catching double digits, I think you got to give some credit and say maybe it was not a foregone conclusion. Because of all the games this round, I think this game, especially once the news that Kalen Ponga was not going to play, I feel like everybody had Manly. So I tried to warn you guys. I didn't say I know the Knights are going to win, but I could just see this had to be an all-in kitchen sink game for the Knights. And when you put everything in, then you always give yourself a chance. I really don't think the Seagulls have that many excuses. Like, what were they doing with the footy? Where was Turbo in this game? Like, to me, they weren't giving away penalties when they had possession. So you can say, well, they never like really got control of the match. But a guy like Turbo usually is the guy that changes the match. So, I think Manly were very poor today, and it's a little bit of a pass if you're just going to blame the refs and not say that Manly were disappointing today and not give any credit to the Knights, because that was a pretty gutsy performance considering it was a backup fullback, a backup 5'8", and a backup halfback in the team. But we'll take it. Beautiful way to finish the round for us. 3-0 best bets, win the mixed matchup. So people who backed the mixed matchup before Ponga got scratched, you got a little bit of a bonus there because we probably didn't feel greatly confident about it. But at the end of the day, if you keep finding value, sometimes you get a bit of luck go your way. So I'll absolutely say we got some luck this week. And anytime the sin bins go in your favor, that's lucky as well. So I'll catch you guys Wednesday, and I might chime in a little bit more on Origin. Only other thing I'll say is enjoy the NBA playoffs if you're watching. I gave an $1.85 tip last week. That's into $1.12 for the Lakers to win their series. So there's plenty of other good tips being shared in the Tripod group, Tripod app. Tune in or join those groups. Everything's free. Everything we possibly put out each week is free to follow. And I appreciate everybody who does. So thanks, guys, and I'll see you Wednesday to preview a shortened round 13. Lego.